Ideologies of education typically place emphasis on one, or perhaps even more than one, of three key elements. Some place emphasis on the individual child as a whole. Some, such as the UK's current educational system, are biased towards the acquisition of knowledge, while others believe that the main purpose of education should be to contribute in a positive way to society. This module has transported me from having very little knowledge of my own personal educational ideology through the worlds of a number of very different but all equally important theorists, from Michael Gove in his preference for a knowledge-based education system to Sir Ken Robinson in his passionate quest for a radical change to a more innovative system aimed at helping children embrace their inborn creativity. From the unorthodox Steiner schools and their focus on eurythmy to the Learn for Yourself initiative laid out by Maria Montessori, I've discovered so many different aspects to the theory of education that it is impossible for me to develop a preference for any particular one. I don't believe that any single theorist has outlined the perfect model for how education should be approached in the UK today. There are aspects of a number of the different ideologies that I think have the potential to benefit both individual pupils and the whole of society, while there are also aspects that I believe to be less positive. My ideology will be built up of various aspects of all of these key educational thinkers.
So, as we know, the current education system headed by Nicky Morgan and previously Michael Gove places huge importance on imparting knowledge to pupils. While I agree in theory that children do need to know stuff in order for them to progress through school, I also believe that this notion of just feeding children information is probably the most crucial factor in what I would personally describe as a mass engagement problem currently facing schools. Through my experiences in school, both as a pupil and via my limited experiences in teaching, I've seen far too many instances of children being totally uninterested and disengaged with activities in the classroom. Schools at the moment are placing so much importance on plying children with knowledge that the fun and interest that should be found in schools is actually being taken out of it. Gove once stated in a question time interview that the focus of attention should be on imparting knowledge, but it needs to be implemented in a way that is stimulating for both teachers and pupils. Yes, Michael, I completely agree. I am of the belief that education should prepare our children and equip them with the necessary skills and qualities needed to make a positive contribution to society. Yet, how are this current generation of children expected to acquire those skills needed to get by in the future if the methods of teaching and the information being taught in schools are based so firmly in the past? In my classrooms, I would look to use Gove's ideas and develop new, innovative ways of delivering information to children. I believe that this information being taught needs to be much more relevant to today's children than it currently is. This notion is backed up by another key thinker in the field of education, Maria Montessori. She identified personal interests of children as being paramount in enabling them to reach their full potential in school.
Take English literature, for example. Is there anything less to be gained from using modern-day classics such as Harry Potter compared with more traditional classics like Of Mice and Men? This may only be supposition on my part, but surely today's students will show a great deal more interest in their work if it was related to something more relevant to them, or something that they are more likely to be interested in. This will not only offer more opportunities for them to fulfil their academic potential, but they would also enjoy themselves while they do it.
Sir Ken Robinson is a perfect example of someone who firmly believes that vast changes need to be made to the current education system. I agree with Robinson in that I believe our children's innate ability to be creative has been stifled by schools. Surely creative thinking has never been more vital than it is today in today's rapidly evolving technological revolution. So instead of plying children with unnecessary, irrelevant and quite frankly boring information, I would campaign for a system which allows children the ability to think much more freely and creatively than they are currently being permitted to do so. Again, Montessori schools in particular place a huge emphasis on letting children explore and teach themselves under mere guidance of teachers. I would definitely like to adapt this idea of independent learning and use it in my classrooms. I would, however, perhaps alter it in a way that addresses one of the key criticisms of Montessori's work. I believe that if children are going to be left to effectively fend for themselves, there needs to be some form of system that can ensure that all children still receive the necessary help they need. It needs to be borne in mind that not children react positively to such a level of freedom. Naturally, some children will prefer to learn in a more structured environment. It is therefore essential that the learning environment is suitable for all types of learning. I would also look at incorporating one aspect in particular of Steiner schools into my ideology of education. In Steiner schools, formal education such as reading and writing is not introduced until the children are around 7 years of age. The Steiner Waldorf Schools Fellowship explains how children should be allowed to experience the relevance of their world before they are made to analyse it. There are also others such as Urmacher who have stated that by introducing children to such intellectual activity too soon could actually end up having a detrimental effect on their overall development. This relatively late introduction to formal learning is in line with a number of other countries, particularly Finland. Having researched the educational outcomes of children in these other countries, it is clear that a later introduction to formal schooling may actually help improve the exam results of some students. So, if the education of children can be more informal and based around freedom and play for a longer time until a later stage, the government may actually achieve what it appears to place at the apex of importance in terms of education: better exam results.
Another approach I would look at campaigning for as a qualified teacher would be to introduce a system whereby children who are being homeschooled and their parents are in some way monitored by local authorities. The current system allows for children to be taken out of school and then taught freely at home by their parents, or anyone else for that matter, without any form of intrusion whatsoever. While I wholly agree that parents should have the right to homeschool their child if they wish to do so, I would advocate a system whereby homeschooling children are monitored at regular intervals, perhaps once or twice per term, to ensure that these children are being given an adequate education. I'd also like it to be made compulsory for children who are taught at home or elsewhere outside of a conventional educational setting to be tested at the same time as their school attending peers, without having to pay an entrance fee. There is currently no law in place that says children being homeschooled need to be formally assessed. If they wish to do so, they have to pay for it themselves. Providing a child with a home education is itself an extremely expensive task, costing parents hundreds, if not thousands of pounds each academic year. This means that less well-off families are probably less likely to give their child the same standard of education that a more affluent family will be able to offer their child. Let's introduce a fresh, innovative system that ensures all homeschooled children are given exactly the same opportunities to succeed as each other, and as those who do attend mainstream schools. This leads me onto the final aspect of my perfect ideology of education. The current testing system throughout all levels of education in the United Kingdom is, I believe, nothing more than an assessment of how much of the information we've been fed in lessons we actually remember. Speaking from personal experience, the current format of assessments in the UK does nothing to see that we understand what is being taught to us. We may revise a subject vigorously so that we know what to say in an exam, but then within a day of that exam, that information is no longer deemed necessary, so it is likely forgotten. I believe that if schools were to adopt a more innovative method of assessment that make the subject matter appear more related to real-world situations, there would be more of a benefit to both pupils and society in general. A method of assessment similar to those set out by PISA guidelines would, I think, be the best way to go. Take mathematics, for example. Throughout my experiences in school, children often feel as if there is little or no reason for them to try at maths, as they feel they will never need to use it once they leave education. These more authentic assessments will deliver students real-world problems that could be solved by using the information they have been taught in lessons. Not only will children gain more of an understanding from the knowledge that they've been fed by having to adopt real-life situation, but it would add an element of interest to assessment, which has been found to be key in the academic achievement of pupils. To conclude, I shall refer to a quote from an American politician, Arthur Duncan. He may be American, but I think that his views on education reform are also relevant to a number of other countries, not least of which the United Kingdom. Our current factory model of education needs a complete revamp, using components from the key thinkers such as Steiner, Ken Robinson, and Maria Montessori, and even government figures such as Michael Gove, to make education much more relevant to the demands of our technologically advancing society.
Not only this, but I feel that my educational ideology would make education much more enjoyable for